Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Point, the podcast that's committed to helping you discover, clarify, and live your purpose. Another fabulous guest today. Please welcome Stephen Shedletzky, Shed to his friends. And I'll make the comment that you seem to have a lot of friends because everyone I know of calls you Shed. Hi, Shed.
Hey, thanks, Bill. It's good to be here. I like that people know me as a friend. That's how I want to be in their life, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's true, and I've seen that from what little I've been able to follow you on social media, which is almost exclusively from my experience on LinkedIn. But also, I was able to see a keynote and a presentation that you gave to the St. Louis HR group a couple of months ago under our good friend Barry Engelhart, and just the connection there and the openness to the people says a whole lot. Not to mention a cool nickname helping. So welcome. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Not to be confused with Cher, but yeah, it's very good to be here.
Yeah. Well, anyone on YouTube, I don't think would have that as a concern. So those of you that aren't familiar with Shed, he is a speaker, a leadership coach, an advisor, very good business mind. He spent a lot of his early career in the corporate world. He then joined Simon Sinek and his organization. I'll let you expand on that a little bit as to what you were doing there and how you're still affiliated. But at this point, Shed has gone on his own. He does keynotes. He does just a whole lot of thought partnering. He does live events on LinkedIn. And I'm just really grateful to have you share some of your time and knowledge and wisdom with us here today.
Thank you, Bill. Delighted to do so.
Good. So let me start with asking you to enlighten us a little bit on that journey I just referenced from corporate to Cynic to Shed.
Yeah, always Shed. Maybe I embrace Shed a little bit more now. I mean, maybe, Bill, you've had this experience, and maybe many of you listening have had this experience as well, that my career has been a series of mostly happy accidents. You know, I went and did business school on a recommendation from a great lecturer. So I took a class in second year university, had an amazing lecturer. He said, check out this program. I went, okay. I applied to it, got in, changed my life for the better, fast track things for the better. And then I found myself, my first day of my first job out of biz school and in the corporate world, 1,000 people were let go post-merger. I was the young whippersnapper walking in as many more people were walking out. And I saw the impact of, in some respects, no fault to their own in terms of the leadership. And sometimes, responsibility could be taken of lack of transparency, lack of clarity of what the future held. And I saw the impact of that uncertainty and that sort of tumultuous culture on not just the productivity of employees, but on their well-being. I distinctively remember the person whose cubicle was across from mine. Her name was Brenda. She was a 37-year veteran of the company, and she was quivering, waiting for her pink slip to come next. And so I saw that impact of an environment on how people showed up and behaved. I met a mentor, a mentor of mine. I was supposed to go and move into a marketing role for that same company that 1,000 people were let go from. And I said to him, I'm afraid to do marketing for an organization where I don't believe what they sell and how they sell it. And he went, watch this video. And he sent me Simon Sinek's Great Leaders Inspire Action TED Talk, the Golden Circle, Start with Why. I successfully procrastinated for 2 months and then finally watched it. And that talk was amazing. That talk sort of it was a shift in perspective. Everything Simon said and the examples he used resonated as true, and it was kind of that puppy dog, like, huh, I see the world differently now.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to draw circles on napkins and explain the concept to anyone who would listen. I went to a conference to hear Malcolm Gladwell speak, and Simon spoke just before him, unbeknownst to me. And hearing him speak live, I mean, I'd felt as though I'd found my orator.
Mm-hmm.
And right time, right place. I did one other quick stint at a big consulting firm, which I learned some things, which was great. And I had the chance to link up and join Simon early in my career, and early in his days of doing what has become his career. I was the fourth person to join that team, and it's been an amazing ride being part of that team for the past 10 plus years.
Yeah, so you talk about the golden circle of why. Start with why, and that whole philosophy. There's a reason that is still probably, is it still one of the top three most viewed TED Talks, or top five anyway?
Yeah, it's definitely top five. I think it's the third most watched. Sir Ken Robinson and Amy Cuddy, I think, are 1 and 2, if I'm right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you get to that stratosphere, whether you're 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, it says a lot about the message that's being given, and not just the message, but you hit on a key point there, I think, Shed, and that is it's not just the message, but it's how Simon delivers it, and how it comes from deep within. It's something that you can just tell emanates from his soul, if you will, his business soul,
Yeah.
his living soul. So I think that's an important point to make as we tie all of this together, as we talk a little more about not just knowing your purpose, or pursuing a purpose, but finding how that is meant to be shared, how that's meant to manifest. And so I think Simon, through his development, is a great example of that. And frankly, I think that you're also a great example of that. So you spent a decade, more or less, with the Simon Sinek organization. You still do some work with them, but not for them, right?
Yeah, So, I mean, when I joined Simon, I started answering fan email for 2 years, which was really hard for an extrovert, but I learned a lot. And bit by bit, I've evolved to have just an amazing journey and career with them. First person to do Simon's social media that wasn't him, and went on to do a lot of product development and training, leading our team of speakers and facilitators, and doing many of my own talks and keynotes and workshops, and just some amazing work over the years. I'm still speaking and facilitating with Simon on his ideas, on his content, publicly in the live online classroom that we've created, as well as with clients, people out there, leaders, organizations who want to create more inspired, safe, and fulfilling places to work, and we help them do that, which has been a joy. And I mean, to your point, Bill, passion is an output. When we find and do, make a good amount of our work related to what we care about and what we want to create in the world. I mean, Simon has so much passion. I have so much passion. You have so much passion, for our work, because it's born of personal experience. We're trying to create for others what we want ourselves. And we figured out that this thing called service is the key to living and leading a life of purpose and a fulfilled life. Using our strengths to contribute to something bigger than ourselves, more important than us in our own lives. And so I'm still a devout follower and a devout contributor to the more inspired, safe, and fulfilled world movement. Delighted to do some of that work with Simon, and I do that work in my own organization now, doing talks and keynotes and fireside chats and workshops and coaching, all around how to create better leaders, better behaviors, better cultures. I'm working on my first book right now called Speak Up Culture, which is what I spoke about with Barry at the St. Louis Human Resources event, on how we can create speak up cultures.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to expand on that because I love it. And I just want to read the full title here: Speak Up Culture. When leaders truly listen, people step up. And
Hmm.
I think it's all. I think all too often we overlook subtitles to books and shows and things, and it's typically that second line that gives us more context. But before I get into that, just another quick tie back to what you'd already mentioned, and that is my view on it is, and I think you're in the same vein, is that once we find our purpose, what we believe our purpose to be, that
Yeah.
then ignites our passion. I think,
Yes.
I think, and then to me, as I see it, when we find our passion, when we find our purpose, that ignites our passion, and then that's the fuel that keeps us going and pursuing that, and leads us to the persistence to get where we want to go with that.
Very good. I just got, Bill, the image of like a pilot light. So
Mm.
when you see a gas powered fireplace, that's operational. There's a pilot light. There's this little flame that's constantly going. You can try to blow it out, but it can't. Unless you cut off the gas, the propane, whatever it might be, which I guess we can equate to life.
Mhm.
But there's a pilot light within all of us, which is every single human being has purpose.
Mhm.
Every single human being has values and beliefs and things that they care about through their own experiences in their life. And when upon reflection and introspection and feedback from other people, because we cannot read the label inside the jar when we're stuck inside the jar ourselves. It's why having the objective perspective, whenever and we help people articulate and find purpose, we always encourage them to get the feedback from an objective partner. And
Mhm.
sometimes someone who doesn't know them so well, like if it's someone who knows you too well or who has lived much of their life with you, it's harder for them to be objective.
Mhm.
But yeah, absolutely. Once we then find what that pilot light is and then feed it more fuel, more energy, more attention, more focus, more intentful cultivation, then that pilot light grows into a flame, a fire that we can't contain
Yeah.
for all the right reasons. And even better, our purpose is linked to our legacy.
Mm.
That if we live and lead our life well and with purpose, meaning that we have positive impact on the people around us, we will be remembered even when we expire.
Sorry to chuckle at that term, but yeah, when we expire. Um, yeah, I like the pilot light that you've mentioned because a pilot light has to have something to burn. So that's our purpose. And then the pilot light fuels it, flames it, and sets it aglow. Um, I'm kind of bouncing around here because there's so much I want to talk to you about. Um,
Hmm.
but let me jump now to leadership because one of the things that I really appreciate from your perspective that you share is the thought of a humble leader.
Mm.
And a humble leader, as you put it, is one that knows they're both part of the problem that they experience and the solutions that they can create. Tell me more about humble leaders.
So, a dear friend of mine, Rich Deviney, who's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, he just came out with a book last year called The Attributes. Probably my favorite 2 pages of any book ever. He makes a distinguishment between a leader and a driver. I hear a lot of sort of negative talk about management. That's not leadership, that's management. And I used to be one of those people. But I have news for you. We need managers. And like how many people do we know and love who have the title manager? Many. Management is important. we need leaders. We need people who have vision and who point to a future and who take care of those around them. And we need managers who help facilitate getting stuff done and know that they get stuff done with and through people. And so I do believe managers can and ought to show up as leaders, but what we need less of are drivers. So drivers view people as cogs in a machine. You know, when your brake pads run out on your car, do you mourn your brake pads? Nope, you just get new brake pads. Like, I've never heard anyone cry because their brake pads need to be replaced, right? That's just not a thing we do. And that's how drivers view their teams and their organizations, that their people are but a function, and when you burn them out, you just put in new people, which can work for a short period of time, but will not work long term and isn't sustainable. Leaders view their people and teams and organizations as what they are, living, breathing organisms. An organization is not bricks and mortar or the cloud. An organization is always made up of its people. And the numbers or the cloud or the bricks and mortar will never save an organization. The people do in their discretionary effort, their ideas, their will. And so I think we need, and I'm attracted to serving humble leaders, which doesn't mean that they don't have ego, but there's a difference between ego and arrogance. I mean, ego is a belief, confidence is a belief that you're good. Arrogance is a belief that you're better than others. Arrogance is unattractive and actually a form of insecurity expressed. And I just want to spend more and more and more of my time with confident, humble leaders. These leaders who are willing to point the fingers at themselves before they point the fingers at others. You know, leaders who go, I'm not getting the results that I want or that we want. What's my part to play in this? And I love supporting those type of introspective, self-aware, humble leaders who know that they're the one thing in common of all the problems that they've experienced and that they have the power to help create solutions. Should they be willing to take a hard look at themselves?
Yeah, and I think that's key. I love your words about ego versus arrogance, because ego, we all have ego, and ego is important, and pride is important, and all of the seven deadly sins are important, as long as we recognize all things in moderation.
Yes.
So when ego runs amok, it becomes arrogance, and so again, you talk about finding and living our purpose based on our experience. I've got experience in that category, and I'm glad to have had the chance to, as you said, take a look at me, to take a look in the mirror as opposed to looking at others, and hopefully dial that back a bit. I love that phrase.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, so so confidence derails into arrogance. Humility can derail into insecurity or meekness. And the antidote to arrogance and the antidote to meekness is to have those trusting relationships of people who, you know those relationships in your life, whether it's a life partner, as my friend Michael Bungay-Stanier says, a spouse-ish person, because not everyone has a spouse, but we all have spouse-ish people. You know, just those relationships, those people that we trust deeply and implicitly. And we know for our degrees, our levels of happiness and fulfillment, we need deep, close relationships, at least 5. We don't need more than 5, but at least 5. And those people who, I have it with my wife for sure, when she has the ability to say the thing that makes me feel triggered because I know she's right. And we need to have those people in our life who let us know when we're, getting over the edges of our skis or falling back too much on our butt from the arrogance and meekness perspective, and who keep us even keeled and who help keep us humble. Because, no matter how many mirrors I have around me, I simply cannot be as objective as I can be when I have the feedback from people who have my back, who are in my corner, and who want what's best for me and are willing to feed me their experience of the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say having mirrors because a phrase I've learned from my wife, who is my single greatest cheerleader in the world, is Bill, part of my role is to hold up the mirror for you. Not so that I can look and do my own interpretation, but to hold it up while she says, here's what everyone else sees. You should see this in the mirror. And she
Mm,
does that in a very positive way, whether it's counting my assets or pointing out maybe it's time to settle down a little bit.
nice.
Maybe it's time for you to reevaluate. Um, so you talked about humility going into insecurity and confidence going into arrogance.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned is one of the things I believe is the ideal situation for me to pursue is what I call true humility. And by
Mm,
that, what I mean is humility is recognizing and accepting all of our faults exactly as they are, not dismissing them, saying, oh, people are worse than me, and not embracing it, saying, yeah, I'm the worst in the world, but taking them exactly as they are. But the key to this, as I see it, is also embracing all of our positive attributes exactly as they are,
mm,
not dismissing things. If someone says, you know, hey, Joe, great job, and Joe says, yeah, well, it was the team. Well, no, it was you leading the team. It was you being part of the team, and it's also, uh, yeah, well, it's the best that's ever been. So just finding that, taking life in realistic terms as best we can, is a good blend of proper ego and proper confidence and proper humility.
yeah, I'm also that type of guy, Bill, that when someone says to me, great job, I'm that annoying person who goes, or, that really could have been better.
Mm.
I'm the type of person who goes, tell me more. Like, thank you for saying great job, but like, what specifically did I or the team do that was great so that we can do it again?
Yeah.
And similarly on the more constructive side, I understand that that didn't meet your expectations, but can you tell me specifically where it fell short so that I and the team know where we can actually improve? And that, when I give uh, um, deliver positive or constructive feedback, I use what our friends at Barry Wehmiller, the Chapman Leadership Institute, have taught me, which is the FBI approach, right?
Mhm.
Feeling, behavior, impact. And so I try not to. I try to hold others to that standard as well.
Yeah.
That if someone says "great job" to me, I go, "Great! What was great about it?" Not that I'm looking to puff my ego, but I want to be able to repeat it
Yeah, and
and build
people,
upon it.
I think you made a key point. People can perceive that arrogant when in reality it's the exact opposite. When in reality it's just your desire to learn and grow. Yeah, I love the FBI concept. I did some facilitation for Waymiller's then not-for-profit side, um, where they were taking that into the community rather than through business. But yeah,
Nice.
that's a great platform that we'll touch base on at some other point. Um, so let me go back to your your purpose evolving from
Hmm.
realizing that what you're trying to accomplish, what you want to accomplish in your life and in your professional life, maybe wasn't any longer best being served by being so directly active in the Simon Sinek group. And you decided, yeah, I can keep my toe in that water and swim with them in the pool for a bit, but I really need to go out on my own because there are some things I want to do. How did that how did that come to you? Was that something that just was a white light experience, or was that something over time?
So our friend Matt Wyatt, who I know has been on this show as well, there's a phrase he has is when passion meets opportunity, which I'm a big believer in.
Mm.
I mean, when I came across Simon's work, I saw him speak live. I had a chance to develop a relationship with him and his team. I mean, he wonderfully put into words the world I wish to live in, and even better, he and his team were leaps ahead
Mm.
of where I was and what I was able to do. And so the ability and the honor to join him and his team was amazing because as his previous CEO Kim said to me, you're going to do this with or without us, and we hope it's with us. And I went, I feel the exact same way. And that simply joining forces, learning from and contributing with them was just an accelerator for me to be able to contribute more. I mean, I had always, Bill, been open to this notion and idea of writing a book, having my own IP, being an author. But I made a deal with myself, which is I'll only do it if I come across something worthwhile.
Okay.
Because I have many friends, not many, I have some friends, and I know many people out there who write books because, quote unquote, that's what keynote speakers do, which I'm pretty sure is a definition of a cruddy book. I wanted to ensure that if I was to make, waste paper or use paper, that I wanted it to be to share something worthwhile, new, fresh, useful. And so, I mean, it was kind of a culmination of events. A friend of mine, Sasha Strauss, I participated in one of his workshops, and he asked a question: how did you define yourself pre-pandemic? How are you defining yourself during the pandemic? And how will you define yourself as we come out of this thing? Which I'm waiting. I'm waiting. We're almost out, but not fully. And so I realized pre-pandemic, I very much defined myself, embarrassingly, by my airline status. I traveled a lot. It was a big deal getting that upgrade into business class when you're on a cross-country flight or a cross-ocean flight. It's a big deal, especially when a lot of your friends do the same thing. And I followed that gamification, that tracking of that airline status more than I'm willing and proud to admit. And then, boom, the pandemic happened and travel stopped. And I realized I very much define myself by these things. And for those of you who are listening by audio only, I'm showing Bill my blue light glasses because Zoom and video on has very much been my natural habitat over the past couple of years. I've been on camera and facilitating and in meetings, as many of us have been, a lot. And as I contemplated, how did I wish to define myself coming out of this thing? Freedom and choice. I mean, I have two young kids, 6 and 3 years old right now. I'm clear on the work I love doing and I want to do. I'm clear on who I want to do it with and for, people who are humble leaders. And though I was open and willing to travel again coming out of this pandemic, I really wanted to make it very, have a lot of intent on what I said yes to and why I said yes to it. And so it was a combination of that. I just started saying yes to more people, like our friend Barry Engelhart, who reached out saying, hey, I'm planning an event. Can you come speak? And I said, well, do you want me to do the Simon stuff? Because if you want me to do the Simon stuff, we got to go through Simon. But I'm happy to explore doing it as me. Which then I remember clearly, Bill. There's a Simon Sinek quote, which is necessity is the mother of invention. And, Barry and I agreed, I'll do the event and I'll do it as me. And I was maybe going to do it with Rich Deviney to do some high performing team attribute stuff, but Rich had another engagement. So it was just me. And I remember it was June or July. The event was in October. And I got an email from the St. Louis Society of Human Resources Management saying, hi, Stephen, we're so excited for your talk. Please click on this link and submit the information on what you're going to talk about. And I went,
Oops.
Oh. And so, I was playing with an idea that very much crystallized because of that prompt. And I remember sitting, it must have been a Friday or Saturday night. My wife had just gone upstairs to bed. My kids were sleeping. And I began to make things clear and crystallize around an idea. At the time, I called it listen down, which I've since changed to speak up, which is far more optimistic and less sort of talking down. But this notion of, we hear people say, listen up. It's a command that we often get from people who are in charge, whether it's a boss, a sports coach, a parent. And what I have experienced of what great leaders do is they listen down, is they spend a lot of time nurturing and hearing the voice of those at their level and more junior to them, and even the customer. And that the more senior you get in an organization, your whisper becomes a shout, and the further away you can get from the truth. And people are hardwired to offer you deference because we're a hierarchical species. And so it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of work, a lot of consistency, a lot of vulnerability to actually hear and nurture the voice of your people. And what's good is when you get the voice of your people, you simply have better and more information to make better decisions. And so that was the sort of inception and birthplace of it. Is I had a keynote to give and didn't know what I was going to give it on, and sort of eureka. And personally, Bill, I've been parts of teams and organizations and relationships and clients where I've seen amazing speak up cultures where there's nearly everything you can speak about within reason and within appropriateness. And then I've also been and seen and witnessed and been parts of teams where there are just some topics we don't talk about. And it's very political and there's lots of red tape. And if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, it blows up in your face, and it's just not healthy. And when it isn't a healthy culture, eventually you won't get healthy results. And so I'm just such a staunch believer in Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety that I want to contribute to it, and that I think I've found my own way to do so in a very accessible and personal way.
Yeah, good. So I want to applaud you because, as I've told you before we recorded, I don't have a list of questions. I don't write out specific questions. But I write down things that I want to make sure we talk about just in case they don't come up. And so far, the four I've written down, you've touched on two. So I'm going to ask you to, and it was the psychological safety that you just mentioned, but I want to come back to that because I think that's important. If you truly are a leader and committed to letting people speak up so that you can listen down, I think is your terminology.
Yeah.
Leaders have to understand, we all have to understand that communication is a two-way street. And there's a quote, and I'm going to misquote it. I apologize, but the paraphrase of the quote is the thing about communication is the belief that it actually happened. So in other words, we communicate and we think, okay, well, I've sent my message out, so I'm done. And
Yeah.
you don't know if the person's received it and vice versa. I need to check that quote, and if I'm going to use it, I should give it proper credit. But one of the things one of the statements I've seen you make by following you on LinkedIn, and they may not all be your comments, but you've had opinions on them. So this one's from Andy Stanley. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Expand on that. Tell us tell us why that resonates so much with you.
Oh, certainly. So yeah, and I've stopped calling it "listen down" just because it feels patriarchal and pedantic. Like it's not the right, but it is about cultivating a speak up culture,
Right.
which starts with the leader, which starts with the leader's willingness to be vulnerable, to share, and to listen. And I fully agree, Bill. Whatever that quote is, this notion of we often think we're far better, clearer communicators than we actually are, and that it takes multiple forms of communication or multiple times of communication in different forms to get the message across. And then this is where active listening comes in. What did you hear? Repeat back what you heard to make sure we're on the same page or not. But yeah, that quote from Andy Stanley, leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. It's the reason that I've put the word truly in the subtitle. When leaders truly listen, people step up. I've learned that listening is a skill. We can actually teach people how to be better listeners. But something that we can't teach people is compassion, the desire to want to listen to others. Because you can arm people with listening skills and they can use it as a bit of an atom bomb. They can use it as a manipulation. That's not truly listening. That's listening to get what you want. That's self-interest. And so yeah, I've learned that in order to create a speak up culture, there are two cyclical components, and they are encourage and reward, which is Encourage means that people feel that it is worth the risk, the reputational, relationship, and job risk to stick their neck out and speak up. And they feel that it's worth it. They feel that it will do more good than harm to take that risk. And then the biggest piece is that when they do, is it rewarded? And reward doesn't mean, oh, Bill, you're so right. All of your ideas are perfect. Let's implement everything. Bill is the best. Bill is our hero. Let's move on. No, reward means that we make you feel as though you matter because you do. And your ideas, your concerns, your emotions, your opinions, your disagreements have merit here. And so long as you make people feel that way, and even if you don't go with their idea, you tell them, we're not doing that and here's why, but thank you for the input, keep it coming, right? That's still a reward. And what's wonderful is that, let's say I report to you and I'm talking with my friends, I want to share this idea with Bill, I'm not sure if I should do it. I'm going to do it. And you and I go out for coffee, or we have our weekly meeting, and I share the idea, and I report back to my team and my group of friends, and I either say, well, that went wonderfully, you should all do it too, or either it was a bad day, or don't you ever talk about this, or this with Bill because it didn't go well. It ripples, right? And so when we have speak up cultures, people are rewarded for sharing their ideas, their concerns, their disagreements, which means they and the people around them are all the more likely to keep doing it, which means you have more data. And of course, it takes more time and more listening and communication. But as soon as you repeatedly ignore or punish people for speaking up, you get silence. And silence is often confused for consensus and agreement, particularly in our Zoom cultures where everyone's on mute and just nodding their heads. And how many all-hands meetings have you been a part of where senior leaders go, any questions? 3, 2, 1. Great, no questions, let's move on. No, like, don't move on. Just be quieter for longer. Like, I did an event earlier this week where I shared some information and then I paused for questions. I timed it 17 seconds until somebody finally piped up, and it felt longer than 17. And so we need to utilize the technology we have, polls and chat and breakout rooms with smaller groups. Because if you aren't getting any feedback or aren't getting any questions or comments, you're not waiting long enough or asking well enough.
And I love all of that. And the 17 seconds seemed like forever to you. I bet it seemed like an hour and a half to those that were in the people that were in that seminar with you. The pressure of, well, I hope someone says something because I don't want to be the one. And come on, talk. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
But leaders and great listeners need to be comfortable with silence.
100%. And to give this quote the proper credit that it deserves, if you notice, I looked away for a minute. I've looked it up. So first of all, it's George Bernard Shaw who's credited with this, and it says simply, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And that's the word I was stuck on remembering, illusion. So the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Nice.
So yeah, there's so much meat on that. So another key part of that is you have to be open to listening. And I just use the talk or the listen down only to make the point. But I'm really happy to hear that you've shifted away from that, because I agree with you that it doesn't accomplish what you had intended it to.
Thank you.
Now is a good time, I think, to go back to your comment from a second ago, psychological safety, and just a part of that is psychological safety is about high candor and low fear. And
Yes.
note, that doesn't mean no fear, that means low fear. So
Bingo.
Now share more on that with us. Give us some more candor on that.
Yeah, deal. Well, thank you for ensuring there's low fear in this conversation. So I like to think of psychological safety as the input to get a speak up culture as an output. That when we
Mhm.
have a speak up culture, it's because we have psychological safety. Psychological safety means that we feel safe to have, as Kim Scott would say, conversations of radical candor, or what I like to call candor with care. Candor means that we can have conversations about the hard truths. There's candor without care. I think Kim Scott calls that obnoxious aggression, and what we want is both. What is it? Challenge directly and care personally is what Kim Scott calls radical candor, and so yeah, cultures that have psychological safety have high candor and low fear. And I make the point to say not no fear, because we talk about the fearless organization or the fearless leader doesn't exist. Never met one, never seen one. Fear is a normal human emotion, experience, and reaction. Fear is healthy. Fear helps keep us
Mhm.
safe, and it's also fear that's linked. Like we wouldn't need to have courage if we didn't have fear. Fear is inextricably linked to us needing to have courage, and so I've spoken up many times amongst friends, amongst colleagues, as being parts of teams, and every time that I've done it, it's always this experience of like preparing myself and talking myself into it and having pre-conversations with friends or a coach or my wife, or should I do it, should I do it, should I do it, I'm doing it, right? And I kind of liken speaking up to being inside of a wrestling ring where you have the ropes and you finally open them up and you go in the ring and the lights are on you. And whether it's a one-on-one conversation or a group or a larger group, your heart is beating and you say the thing, and does it go well? Is it rewarded, which means there's low fear, or is it ignored or punished, which means now there's high fear and you don't have psychological safety? And there's a difference between, one of the misnomers or one of the myths around psychological safety is our harmonies on Kumbaya are perfect. There's no tension, there's no issues, there's no conflict. No, that's not psychological safety. Psychological safety means that we can share our ideas and people can attack those ideas, not the messenger. That we can
Mhm.
have conflict. There's the explain this to me. I'm not sure I understand that or that makes sense to me. That we can put spears and poke holes in one another's arguments, but do it from a perspective and in a manner that has care, respect, concern, and has the whole purpose of leading to improvement and better outcomes. So, psychological safety is not an absence of tension and conflict. It's actually when we have tension and conflict and we deal with it in a healthy manner, that's psychological safety.
Yeah, and that's evidence. Thank you for that clarification. It's brilliant, but that is uh, at the root of Patrick Lencioni's five functions of an effective team,
Yes.
because the second layer of that is conflict. The primary layer is trust. The second layer is conflict, and it speaks to everything that you just talked about, and that is very simply, Shed, that if we aren't able to have conflict, and by this healthy conflict, me being comfortable enough to challenge your idea, realizing that there won't be ramifications, negative ramifications, and realizing that it's a means to an end where we can
Yeah.
explore all of the aspects to end up with the best resolution possible. So conflict, effective and positive conflict is a good thing. But people hear conflict, and the negative connotations are probably 80% of what if you polled 100 people, 80% of them would have negative comments when you hear what does conflict mean to you. Um, okay, we're getting close to the time I promised you that we'd stay within. But there's another one that I want you to expand on, because this has been brilliant conversation about leadership, which to me is also about how to just be a better human.
Hmm.
So whether it's leadership in a business setting, which we've kind of focused on, whether it's leadership in the community, at home, or just demonstrating that you have leadership by being a decent person. Um, what another thing you've said is when it comes to leadership and everything we've talked about, I'm just going to roll it up that way. Let's stop calling them soft skills. They're hard and paramount in importance.
Yes. So there are many terms out there that I think do more of a disservice than a service. Terms like human resources, human capital, a human asset, soft skills. I think these are terms that we should strike from the record. I don't think anyone wants to be referred to as a resource or as capital or an asset. I think we should just call them people, human beings. It's what we are. No, I don't want to be known as a 1.0 FTE full time employee. I want to be known as Steven or Shed, who has a heartbeat and who has strengths and cares and a life inside of work and outside of work, and that I want harmony and integration across those. And so I think there are some terms that unfortunately cause more abstraction and cause more human beings being treated as data on a spreadsheet than as Bob Chapman says, heart count over head count, right?
Yeah.
And another one of those terms is soft skills. I don't like the term because it devalues them. They are hard and of paramount importance. They are human. And again, my colleague Rich Davini distinguishes the difference between skills and attributes, which I think is an important distinction here as well. But when it comes to leadership and being a good human being, it is around compassion, empathy, care, concern, patience, nurturing, decisiveness, ownership, responsibility, service orientation, confidence. And all of these things are very hard. And so I think we do them a disservice when we just label them as soft skills. I just think it devalues how hard they actually are and how important they actually are.
I can't agree more. I would be curious to find out the genesis of the phrase soft skills, probably by someone or someones who don't have those skills. So therefore it's easier to say, I have
They're
this.
just soft and amorphous, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not as quantifiable, which, in my opinion, makes them that much more difficult. There's so much nuance because it is interacting with the human side of everything we deal with, and dealing with humanity, humans, individuals, can get pretty dicey pretty quickly. In particular, if that communication is an illusion as opposed to something really, really focused and intentional.
Beautiful. Nice callback, yes.
Thanks. One of the things that Shed and I have talked about a couple of times, just getting to know each other a little bit more before we got and started recording, is the idea Shed puts forth, the idea that one's purpose is pretty much locked and loaded by 18, 19, 20 years of age. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So I've been taught, and this is with the work with Simon Sinek over the years, that by the time we're around the age of 16 to 20, in a normal functioning adult, we've had enough brain development and life experience to have our purpose fully formed. Now, whether we're aware of that pilot light and know what the pilot light is and contribute to it or not is a different story. But I recall, Bill, I did a purpose discovery. The youngest person I did a purpose discovery with was 16 years old. I know them still to this day. And what we articulated as her purpose then is manifested and as strong as ever now. However, what's fun is we did her purpose discovery when she was 16. She ended up going off to college. She became a nurse. Her why was all around to care for people so as they're at their best, something around that. And when she was 26 or 27, 10 years later, she still came back to a workshop to find her purpose again, which was fascinating to me. Meaning, I still do believe that we've had enough life experience to find out our values or beliefs, what we do care about by the time we're 16 to 20. But knowledge is power. We need to reflect upon it, have an idea of what it is, and then enact it, put it into action. Because otherwise it'll be dormant. And yeah, I mean, I remember when my first child was born, one of my mentors said to me, "You have a new why, a new purpose." And I went, same purpose, stakes are higher.
Yeah,
And
great.
so I think there's always more, the unexamined life is not worth living. I think there's always more that we can do to understand it better, articulate it better, apply it better.
Hmm.
We evolve, we grow, the world around us evolves and grows and changes. And again, from Matt Wyatt, passion meeting opportunity. So I think we can figure out what we do care about, but it's a moving target to always find how we can bring it to life in whatever season of life we are in.
Yeah, and so I've come to be more open to accepting that premise, not because I was against it to start with. It was just a new premise uh, in my way of thinking. So when I think of purpose, I've always looked at it, and on the show, people have heard me talk about it quite a bit, that to me, our purpose over time doesn't necessarily change per se, but it does evolve and it does grow, and we see different ways to have that purpose manifest and to do what we can to have it come out. And your story is a great example where you had a purpose in your early corporate life, and then it wasn't being fulfilled the way you had hoped it would be. And then you did a lot of work in the Simon Sinek organization. And boy, you were charged, and your purpose was right there, and it was honed and sharpened, and you got a lot of satisfaction and delivered a great deal of value. But then it started to evolve again, where you started to say, I've got so much experience, so much life experience. Now I can grow and evolve and go out on my own, and suddenly at the drop of a hat come up with the right topic for a keynote talk. Uh, yeah, so um, I think we're very much on the same wavelength on most everything we've talked about today, but our purpose being essentially the same, but with some growth and more difference in application than I think in really truly. But the other thing you talked about, and another reason I love doing this show, and is why I do this show, is sometimes we have to discover it. And my purpose with this show is having the listeners start to get that aha moment, hopefully,
Hmm.
through the story of people that I'm fortunate to have as my guests. So there's going to be people that listen to this today, and they're going to go, "Damn, Shed, you know, you just exploded everything. I get it now." And it might be just a tiny thing, it might be something major, but that's what's beautiful about realizing that our purpose can and will evolve versus change. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the value of a good quote or a good communication, anything written or said, is wow. I know that to be true. We've never heard a quote and say I don't agree with that, and it's so good. A great quote articulate like the quote you shared around communication, the illusion that's taken place. It's like, yep, I've lived that.
Yeah,
It's simple in its sophistication, and it resonates from our experience as true.
100%. So I told you that I don't have a set list of questions. You had thought I might have one question that I open the show with, and I don't, but I do have one that I always end the show with. And that is in the context of everything we've shared, everything we've talked about, your journey, your purpose, the evolution of that, the evolution of how you bring that to bear in the world, in life, personal and professional. When you put all that together, for yourself and for our listeners, from your perspective, what's the point?
The point is that I think human beings are far better when we have more curiosity. And questions and listening and care are the gateway to that curiosity, where we can understand more about the very people we love, and we can understand more about the very people who we may call other. And that if we really want to make progress in this world, at work, in society, at home, beyond, I think listening and curiosity is our superpower to help us get there and to help us make progress.
Well, there you have it, and I appreciate that, and I agree with that, and well, you can't go wrong with a superpower, can you? Well, Shed, thank you so much. I do want to point out that all of Shed's information is going to be in the show notes, but for the most part, if you want to find Shed, look to LinkedIn, and it's Stephen, Stephen, Shedletzky, traditional spelling. But you'll find him on LinkedIn, and he's very engaging, and he puts out a lot of great content, and has some live interaction, some live, I'll call it workshops on LinkedIn. And make a note to put on your must-read list, probably around this time in early 2023, the Speak Up Culture book, When Leaders Truly Listen, People Step Up, because that'll come out, I think, in early 2023. Shed, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I hope this conversation helps your audience, and I'd be delighted to come back and talk more about Speak Up Culture once it's, we've drafted 2 chapters, so when we finish chapter 13, we can hop on and have another conversation.
Well, I look forward to that.
If you'll have me.
I was just going to say, I look forward to that, and I'm going to hold you to that, because I'll still be doing this when that book's ready, and I'll be real eager to get more information on that. And speaking of your hope that the listeners got something out of this, I did. And listeners, if you haven't done so already, I would ask that you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, and maybe give it a review if you're so inclined. That helps the show get more relevance, which means more people can find it, which means more people can hear some of the wisdom from people like my now good friend Shed. So thank you all for listening. Shed, thank you again for your time, and we'll talk again off recording over the next year, but on recording when the book's ready.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.